The truck slowly pulled away from the house on Maple Street, leaving behind a cloud of dust and the smell of diesel fuel. Sarah Henderson stood on the porch of her new home, holding a box labeled Kids Room and smiling. The two-story house with white siding and blue shutters looked just like she had dreamed. A classic American dream in the quiet town of Cedar Ridge, Oregon. 7-year-old Ethan was running around the yard with Max, their golden retriever, exploring the new place. The boy was covered in freckles with bright red hair that refused to lie flat. Max, a 4-year-old dog, seemed just as excited about the move. He was sniffing every bush, every tree, marking his new territory. Between two old oaks in the back of the yard, there was already a swing hanging, left behind by the previous owners. "Mom, can I build a fort here?" Ethan shouted, pointing at the trees. "Of course, honey, but let's unpack first." Michael Henderson carried another box of computer equipment out of the car. A freelance IT consultant, he was glad to move away from the noise of the big city. In Cedar Ridge, the internet was fast enough for work, and life promised to be calm and peaceful. Max suddenly stopped at the fence separating their yard from the neighbors. The dog sniffed the ground, let out a quiet whine, and started digging with his paws right at the fence line. Ethan ran over to him, but Max only looked up with intelligent brown eyes and went back to digging. It was quiet on the other side. A one-story house with a neat garden looked empty. The first ones to greet the newcomers were the neighbors to the left, a young couple from the house with blue shutters. Lisa Carter was a pretty blonde around 25, but her eyes were red, as if she had recently cried. Next to her stood Danny, a man a little older, with a tense expression on his face. "Welcome to the neighborhood," Lisa said, though her smile looked forced. "I'm Lisa. This is my husband, Danny. If you need anything, just ask." Danny nodded politely, but it was clear his thoughts were elsewhere. He kept glancing at his wife with a mix of guilt and frustration on his face. "What a beautiful boy," Lisa said, looking at Ethan with a painful sadness. "Kids are such a joy. Danny and I are planning to..." She didn't finish the sentence because her husband suddenly grabbed her hand. "We have to go," he said. "See you later." They left, but even through the closed door, you could hear the muffled but clearly unfriendly argument resume. Sarah shook her head. It seemed the young couple was going through a rough time. On the right side of their yard lived Margaret Thompson, a neat-looking woman about 58 years old, wearing glasses and a gray cardigan. She appeared by the fence while the family was unloading the last boxes and stood watching them with a look of cautious curiosity. "Welcome," she said politely, though not very warmly. "I'm Margaret, a retired librarian, moved here 2 years ago after I stopped working." She looked the family over carefully, pausing on Ethan. "Nice boy you've got. Just keep a close eye on him. These days things aren't as safe. Too many strange people around, especially online. You never know who lives next door." With those words, she went back into her house and pulled the heavy curtains shut behind her. Sarah thought the neighbor seemed a bit paranoid, but mostly harmless. A typical lonely retiree who watched the neighbors out of boredom. The friendliest of all was Walter Green, who lived in the house across the road. A man in his 60s with kind gray eyes and a wide, genuine smile. He came over to them with a plate of still warm homemade cookies and a bouquet of roses from his garden. "Welcome to Cedar Ridge," he said warmly, offering the treats to Sarah. "I'm Walter Green. I've lived here for several years, know the area well. If you need anything, don't hesitate to ask." Ethan curiously looked at the friendly old man. Walter noticed and crouched down to be at eye level with the boy. "You must be the local explorer," he said with a smile, looking at the leaf fort Ethan was building. "I see you're already checking out the new place, and this is your loyal helper?" Max came up to Walter, sniffed his outstretched hand, and calmly let himself be petted. The dog clearly sensed the man's kindness. "His name is Max, and I'm Ethan," the boy said. "We moved from Portland." "Wonderful. You're going to like it here. It's quiet, peaceful, lots of space to play. I've got great apples growing in my yard, and in the fall, the pears will be ripe. I'll make sure to share when they're ready." Walter seemed like the kind of neighbor every family would want. Kind, helpful, always ready to lend a hand. There was a special warmth in his eyes when he looked at Ethan, as if the child reminded him of someone he had once loved. The next 2 months passed in the pleasant routine of settling into a new home and a new life. Ethan quickly adjusted to the local school and made friends with a neighbor boy, Tommy Johnson, who lived 3 houses down. Every day after school, he played in the yard with Max, building more and more complex forts out of fallen leaves, climbing the old oak trees, and swinging on the swings. Michael set up work with his clients and got a few big contracts from companies back in Portland. Sarah started teaching at the local elementary school and was happy with the peaceful atmosphere of the small town. Walter Green quickly became almost part of the family. He often stopped by with some homemade baked goods, helped Michael with yard work, and taught Ethan to recognize different types of roses and how to take care of them properly. The boy got used to seeing the friendly neighbor by the fence almost every day. Walter always greeted him, asked how school was going, and sometimes gave him small gifts: books about nature, a set of colored pencils, a model airplane. "What a wonderful man," Sarah often said to her husband in the evenings. "You can tell he really loves children. It's a shame he never had a family of his own." Walter had indeed told them that he had spent his whole life working as an engineer at a big company in San Francisco, and after retiring, he decided to move somewhere quieter. He spoke little about his personal life, only occasionally mentioning that he had lost loved ones a few years ago and now preferred the peace and quiet of country life. The only thing that worried the family a little was Max's strange behavior in the yard. The dog often returned to the same spot near the back of the property line, sniffing around, quietly whining, and sometimes digging at the ground. It was the same place he had started digging on their first day after the move. Michael thought there might be some chemicals in the soil, fertilizers, old cleaners, or solvents spilled by the previous owners. Such substances could irritate Max's sensitive nose and make him act anxious since he hated strong smells. October 2017 turned out to be unusually sunny and warm for Oregon. The oak leaves had turned yellow but hadn't fallen yet, creating a golden canopy above the yard. October 15th was just another Sunday, a day that would forever divide the Henderson family's life into before and after. Sarah was making stuffed peppers for dinner, occasionally stirring the onions on the stove, and glancing out the window at her son playing in the yard. Michael was in his upstairs office, trying to finish a complex project for a Portland IT company. The deadline was approaching fast, and the system still crashed during load testing. Ethan was spending the day in the yard, building his most ambitious fort yet out of fallen leaves. He gathered the leaves into big piles under the oak trees, stacked them into walls, made passageways and secret rooms. Max was helping with the enthusiasm of a 4-year-old dog, scattering leaves with his paws, jumping into the piles, barking happily, and running around the yard with his tail wagging. Around 4 in the afternoon, Sarah looked out the window to check on her son. Ethan was sitting under the largest oak tree, deeply focused on crafting something out of sticks and leaves, probably building a roof for his fort. Max lay nearby, wagging his tail contentedly and watching his little owner work. It was a typical picture of an autumn Sunday. Nothing seemed out of place. Suddenly, the phone rang. It was her mother-in-law, Ellen, calling with her usual Sunday questions. How were things going in the new place? Did Ethan like his school? Were they missing the city? Sarah answered the call while standing by the stove where the onions were slowly frying. But soon, caught up in the conversation, she walked into the living room. She didn't notice how time flew by. The chat, as usual, dragged on. Ellen was lonely and loved to share the latest news, retell TV shows, and give endless advice. About 15 minutes later, Max suddenly ran into the room. The dog was clearly upset. He whined, tugged at Sarah's skirt, darted back and forth between her and the kitchen door. At first, she didn't understand what was going on, but then she caught a strong smell. Something was starting to burn on the stove. Sarah quickly said goodbye to her mother-in-law, rushed to the kitchen, turned off the burner under the scorched onions, and threw open the window to air out the smell. And then, as she glanced out the window without thinking, she noticed that the yard was empty. Ethan was nowhere to be seen. Max was already standing at the door, staring tensely toward the fence and whining softly. The leaf fort was half torn apart, as if someone had hurriedly searched through it or simply left the work unfinished. The boy was nowhere to be seen, neither under the trees nor on the swings, nor near the house. Sarah thought he had probably run inside to use the bathroom and went back to cooking, stirring the peppers in the pot. 10 minutes passed, then another 15. Ethan still hadn't returned. Something unpleasant pricked at her mother's heart. That instinct nature gives all mothers, the one that rarely fails. Sarah turned off the stove, wiped her hands on her apron, and stepped into the yard. "Ethan! Ethan! Where are you?" she called out, scanning the yard. Only silence answered. Just the rustle of yellowing oak leaves and the distant sound of Mr. Johnson's lawnmower. He mowed his perfect lawn every Sunday at exactly 5 o'clock. Max ran up to her, but something in the dog's behavior was deeply troubling. The retriever darted between Sarah and the fence, whining and pawing at the ground. He kept running to the fence to sniff, then back to Sarah, then to the fence again. The dog was clearly trying to say something, but couldn't put into words what only he seemed to understand. "Michael," Sarah called into the house. "Michael, come here right now. What's going on?" Michael came down the stairs with an annoyed look on his face. He'd been pulled away from solving a particularly difficult technical issue at the worst possible moment. "Ethan is gone. He was playing in the yard and now he's nowhere to be found." The irritation instantly turned to worry. Michael set his coffee mug down on the porch railing and quickly came down the steps. They searched the house methodically, checked every room, the basement where Michael kept old computer equipment, the attic with boxes of Christmas decorations. They looked in every closet, under every bed, every place a 7-year-old might hide. There was no sign of Ethan. Sarah ran to the Johnsons' house. Tommy was playing video games in his room and looked genuinely surprised by her question. "Ethan? Haven't seen him since yesterday. Why, Aunt Sarah?" "It's nothing, dear. If you see him, tell him to come home right away." By 5 o'clock, they had spoken to every neighbor on Maple Street. Danny and Lisa Carter had been preparing all day for a wedding trip to Portland. Margaret Thompson was deeply absorbed in a new novel and hadn't looked up from her book. Walter Green had been working in his garage on an old Chevrolet. His clothes and hands were covered in motor oil, and everything supported the old man's story. No one had seen the 7-year-old red-haired, freckled boy. By 6, they called the police. The first officer arrived within 20 minutes. Officer James Patrick listened carefully to the parents and began filling out a report. An hour later, Detective Connor O'Brien arrived, a tall man with sharp gray eyes who had made missing children cases his special focus over 20 years of service. "Tell me everything from the beginning," O'Brien asked. "Any strange phone calls? Suspicious people near the house? Problems at school?" All the answers were no. Ethan was a calm child, a straight-A student, not the type to run away or play dangerous games. By 8 that evening, a crowd of volunteers had gathered near the house. Neighbors, police officers, members of the local church brought strong flashlights and thermoses of coffee. Search parties were formed and combed the area throughout the night. They checked the school, the playground, every place a 7-year-old might go. Max's behavior grew increasingly strange. The dog paced the yard, refused food, and kept returning to the fence to scratch at the ground. One of the officers explained that dogs are very sensitive to their owner's stress and often know when something is seriously wrong. The result of the first night's search was 0. The next morning, county specialists joined the effort. O'Brien led a team of 6 investigators. By noon the following day, the story had made the local news. A photo of the smiling, red-haired, freckled boy appeared on TV screens throughout the state. O'Brien questioned every resident of Maple Street thoroughly. Danny and Lisa Carter really had been preparing for the wedding. Their alibi was backed by photos, witnesses, and restaurant receipts. Margaret Thompson could recall the detailed passages from her book with convincing accuracy. Walter Green showed them the disassembled car in his garage, and his tools were arranged like those of a professional mechanic. All 3 passed a polygraph test and showed no signs of deception. By Wednesday, the FBI got involved. Agent Jennifer Clark gave the parents a hard truth. After 72 hours, the chances of finding a missing child alive dropped sharply, but they weren't giving up. The investigation began into all individuals previously charged with crimes against minors. There were more than 200 of them in the state. They checked school teachers, coaches, and every adult who had contact with the boy. Scent tracking dogs from Portland tried to pick up a trail, but it ended right at the Hendersons' backyard fence. The result was still zero. By the end of the first week, the first false leads started coming in. A woman at a mall in Portland was sure she had seen Ethan with a strange man. Sarah and Michael rushed there within 30 minutes, but the surveillance footage showed an ordinary father with a fussy son. "That's not him," Sarah whispered, and something inside her broke. The second false alarm came from Seattle. A teacher believed her new student was the missing Ethan. It turned out the boy had indeed moved from Oregon and looked very similar to Ethan, but he was from another town, and all his documents were in order. The third lead came from a gas station camera 50 miles from town. The footage showed a man filling up his car with a child sitting in the back seat. The time matched, Sunday around 8 p.m. The car owner was located 2 days later, a traveling salesman driving home with his son from his ex-wife's. Another dead end. By the end of the second week, Ethan Henderson's story had become a national headline. CNN and Fox News sent news crews to Cedar Ridge. The quiet town turned into a media circus. Journalists camped outside the Henderson house around the clock, bombarding neighbors for interviews and comments. Sarah and Michael gave several interviews, hoping publicity would help find their son. They appeared on a national morning show. "Our boy is out there somewhere," Sarah said into the camera, barely holding back tears. "If someone is keeping him, please let him go. We need him. We love him." After the broadcast, the tip line received thousands of calls. People reported sightings of red-haired boys all over the country. Every tip had to be investigated. Most turned out to be false, but some people called just out of sick curiosity. "Your son is dead," said one anonymous caller. "Forget him." Such calls caused the parents unbearable pain. Fake psychics emerged, claiming they could find the boy with supernatural powers. Police were forced to follow even these visions, searching every body of water in the area. The result was still nothing. By the end of October, the active search phase was scaled back. O'Brien assured the parents that the case was not being closed, but there were no new leads. The media moved on to other stories. Cedar Ridge returned to being a quiet town, but for the Henderson family, the nightmare was only beginning. November brought the first snow and a sense of utter hopelessness. Sarah stopped opening the curtains. The bright light felt like mockery. How could the sun shine when her boy was missing? Michael never turned off his computer, browsing missing children databases through the night. His eyes were red from lack of sleep. His hands trembled from too much caffeine. The same groceries sat in the fridge for weeks. They had both lost their appetites. Sarah mechanically bought Ethan's favorite yogurts and juices, only to throw them out after they expired. "You didn't sleep again," Sarah said one morning as she came into the kitchen and found her husband at the table with red, inflamed eyes. "There's new info from Denver. A boy who looks like Ethan." "Michael, stop!" Sarah's voice was tired, almost indifferent. "You're destroying yourself." "What else am I supposed to do?" he snapped, raising his voice for the first time in months. "Sit back and do nothing? Pretend nothing happened? Our son is out there." "Or maybe he's gone," Sarah whispered, saying out loud what they both had been thinking, but were afraid to admit. Michael turned pale, as if she had slapped him. "Don't you ever say that? Ever!" They had become strangers to each other. Grief, instead of bringing them closer, had pulled them apart, perhaps forever. Michael threw himself into the search, turning half the garage into a coordination center. Maps with markings, photos of Ethan at different ages, charts and diagrams covered every wall. Sarah created a Find Ethan group on social media. Within a month, it had thousands of followers from across the country. Every day brought hundreds of messages from people claiming to have seen the boy in various parts of America. Each message brought a flicker of hope and had to be checked. During the first year, they traveled to 12 different states, chasing the most credible leads. Every trip ended in disappointment. Every false alarm took a piece of their souls and the last of their savings. Their marriage was falling apart. They stopped talking about anything except the search. Housework, jobs, friendships, all faded into the background. Their bed had gone cold. Their embraces became formal and rare. "We're losing each other," Sarah said one evening at the end of the first year of searching. "Ethan wouldn't have wanted this." "Ethan would want us to find him," Michael replied, eyes still locked on the computer screen. "What if we never do?" Michael slowly turned to face her. His eyes held a pain too deep for words. In just 1 year, he had aged at least 10. "Then we'll keep searching for the rest of our lives." Max was visibly aging too, yet he never stopped returning to that spot by the fence. The once energetic young dog had turned into a gray, slow old companion. He barely ate and spent most of the day lying in the place where he had last played with Ethan. Sometimes he would sit by the fence for hours, staring into nothing, as if waiting for the red-haired boy to come back and call him to play. The second year brought new trials. In March, a lead came from Los Angeles. A social worker reported a boy at a children's shelter who had been found on the streets. Didn't remember his name, but looked remarkably like the missing Ethan. Sarah and Michael flew to California as fast as they could. They didn't speak during the flight, each silently preparing to see their son again and dreading another disappointment. The boy really did look like him. Red hair, freckles, about the same age. But when he turned around, "It's not him," Sarah whispered, and something inside her finally shattered. It was later discovered the child suffered from amnesia after a car accident in which his Canadian tourist parents had died. Another shattered hope, another sleepless night in a cheap motel where Sarah cried into her pillow while Michael stared at the ceiling, wondering how much longer he could endure this. In the summer of the second year, a message came from a private school in Sacramento. This time, Michael went alone. Sarah was too drained from past letdowns. But within a minute of speaking to the child, it was clear he wasn't their son. The third year brought the cruelest blow. In November, the Portland morgue called. A boy's body had been found in the river, roughly the same age. His clothes resembled what Ethan had been wearing the day he disappeared. Sarah refused to go. Michael went alone, bracing for the worst. A DNA test confirmed it wasn't their son. The similar clothes were just a coincidence. The fourth year marked a turning point. Sarah took an indefinite leave from teaching. She could no longer look at other people's children without thinking of her own missing son. Michael kept working, but his productivity dropped sharply. He lost several key clients and had to take out a loan to cover search expenses. In 4 years, they followed over 1,000 false leads. They traveled to 30 states. They spent all their savings and went $40,000 into debt. The fifth year brought an unexpected problem. Detective O'Brien retired, and the new investigator, Mark Thompson, lacked his predecessor's dedication. "I understand how you feel," he told Michael and Sarah during one of their monthly meetings. "But realistically, the chances of finding the boy alive after all these years are close to zero." By the 5th anniversary of Ethan's disappearance, local media ran a story about a family that refused to give up. After the article was published, they received hundreds of letters of support from people across the country. Many included small donations. This helped them create a foundation to support families of missing children. "We couldn't find our son," Sarah said at the founding meeting of the Voice of Hope Foundation, "but maybe we can help other parents find theirs." Working at the foundation became their salvation. Helping other families gave meaning to their pain. In its first year, the foundation helped find 17 children across the country. The 6th year brought major changes to Maple Street. The newlywed Carters divorced. Their marriage couldn't withstand the constant closeness to tragedy and the pain of knowing they could never have children of their own. Lisa moved in with her mother in California, and Danny sold the house and moved to Seattle. The Harrisons moved in next. Robert, Jennifer, and their 3 children, aged 5 to 10. Michael and Sarah introduced themselves on the first day. By now, they told Ethan's story almost automatically, like a rehearsed speech. They showed photos, explained what to watch for, and asked them to report any suspicious people or situations. Jennifer Harrison cried as she listened. She instinctively pulled her children close, as if to shield them from possible harm. "I can't even imagine," she whispered through tears. "How have you survived this? How are you still standing?" "We haven't," Sarah answered honestly. "We're just still here, one day at a time." The Harrison children played in the yard just like Ethan once had. Their laughter drifted through the windows of the Hendersons' home, bringing with it a bittersweet ache of memory. Margaret, the former librarian, had gradually stopped going outside altogether. She no longer greeted the neighbors, only occasionally watched the street from behind the curtains, quietly, intently, with an expression that made many people uneasy. Walter Green remained the only constant in their world. Over 6 years, he had become almost a part of the family, always ready to help, offer sympathy, ask about the latest updates in the search. He had aged noticeably, more gray in his hair, deeper wrinkles, a slower walk. But he still tended his garden, tinkered with cars in his garage, and kept up good neighborly relations. Still, Michael had started to notice one odd thing. Whenever the Harrison kids played in the yard, especially 7-year-old Emily, who was closest in age to missing Ethan, Walter always found a reason to come out to the fence. He would stand there and listen, a tense, almost pained expression on his face. Maybe the kids just remind him of his loneliness, Sarah explained. He seems to have no one left. How sad it must be to be all alone. The 7th spring came unexpectedly early. March 2024 was unusually warm for Oregon. The snow melted by mid-month, revealing soft earth and the first shoots of green grass. The air smelled of spring and renewal, scents that had once brought joy, but now only reminded them that life continued, no matter their personal tragedy. By then, Max had truly become an old dog. The 11-year-old retriever moved slowly and spent most of his days lying on his bed inside the house. But whenever he went outside, he still headed to the same spot by the fence, where he had last played with Ethan 7 years ago. And then, one day in March, the old dog suddenly sprang to life. Max began digging at the ground by the fence with a fury they hadn't seen in months. He clawed at the earth with his hind legs so frantically that clumps of dirt flew in all directions. He whined, yelped, and barked, loudly, insistently, as if trying to tell the humans something they couldn't understand. Michael looked up from the garden beds he was preparing for the new season and frowned. After 7 years, he was used to his dog's quirks, but this kind of energy was something Max hadn't shown in a long, long time. "What's going on, buddy?" he muttered, wiping his hands on his jeans and walking toward the dog. Max was digging in the exact same spot he had dug on the day their world fell apart, the day Ethan disappeared. "Michael!" Sarah called from the house. "What's going on with Max? He's barking so loudly." Sarah's voice had changed over the years. It carried a weariness now, a heaviness that hadn't been there before. Gray strands streaked her chestnut hair, and fine lines had deepened around her eyes. Time had not been kind to the mother of a missing child. Michael tried to pull the dog away from the fence, but Max wouldn't budge. In fact, the old dog looked more agitated than ever, as if urgently trying to communicate something. "Help him," Sarah said, stepping into the yard and taking in the scene. Maybe he smelled something. After years of searching, they had learned to pay attention to every sign, no matter how small. Too often, tiny details had led to important discoveries. Granted, all of them had turned out to be false leads, but hope, as they knew all too well, dies last, and they had already helped other desperate families cling to it. Michael brought a shovel from the shed. The ground was tough. Spring in Oregon always began with soil hardened by the winter frost. But after a few minutes of determined digging, the shovel hit something solid with a dull thud. Sarah gasped when a piece of white bone appeared from the dirt. That's not... She couldn't finish the sentence, her hand pressed tightly to her throat. Michael carefully dug out the bone. It was large, clearly from a big animal. A dog's shoulder blade, if he remembered his anatomy right. They looked at each other. After 7 years, they had learned not to hope too much. They had endured too many false hopes, too much pain. But Max kept digging, even more furiously now. He moved slightly to the side and began tearing at a new spot in the soil, whining and yipping with excitement. "Maybe a few animals were buried here," Sarah suggested. "Or one big one," Michael replied, continuing to dig. Within half an hour, they had uncovered several more bones. All canine, all quite old. Michael immediately thought of Walter Green. He remembered the neighbor once mentioning he had a very smart dog before they met. "I'll go ask Walter," he told Sarah. "See if this could have been his dog." Michael walked over to the elderly neighbor. Walter, as always, met him on the porch. Neatly dressed, polite, with an expression of genuine interest on his face. "That's my old dog, Rex," Walter explained after Michael told him about the discovery. "I buried him about 10 years ago, maybe a little more. He was a wonderful dog, a German Shepherd, lived with me for 14 years. But why did you bury him on our property? Michael asked, a bit surprised. Walter smiled sheepishly, like a child caught in a harmless prank. Well, strictly speaking, that used to be the edge of our lots. Rex loved lying in that exact spot, in the shade of your oaks, especially on hot summer days. I thought it would be a fitting place for his final rest. I hope you don't mind. The explanation sounded perfectly reasonable and logical. Many people bury their pets in their favorite spots. Michael assured the neighbor it was no problem. They understood how he felt. How's the search for Ethan going? Walter asked, as he had done at every meeting for the past 7 years. Any new leads? Michael shook his head. Unfortunately, nothing significant, but we're not giving up. We still hope. He was such a great kid, Walter said, looking toward the Henderson house with a sad expression. Always greeted me politely when he saw me. Well-mannered, smart boy. You raised him well. Michael nodded silently. Every time someone spoke about Ethan in the past tense, something inside him tightened, as if the whole world had accepted the idea that their son was gone. Everyone, except them. When Michael returned home, he found that Max still hadn't calmed down. The dog kept digging in different spots along the fence, as if searching for something specific. By evening, the old retriever looked completely exhausted, but he wouldn't stop. What's wrong with him? Sarah asked, watching the dog with growing concern. Should we take him to the vet? Let's wait until tomorrow, Michael decided. See how he acts. But the next morning, Max started digging again, this time in a different spot, about 2 steps from the original one. His behavior became even stranger and more urgent. He whined, whimpered, and looked at Michael and Sarah with eyes that seemed to beg them to understand, to help. The following days were filled with growing tension. Max continued his digging with a persistence that bordered on obsession. He had visibly lost weight, hardly ate, and drank only water. He spent most of his time by the fence digging in various spots. Veterinarian Dr. Clark came to the house and carefully examined the dog. Physically, Max was healthy for his age, but his behavior certainly raised questions. He's acting like a dog that's detected something specific, Dr. Clark explained. Their sense of smell is millions of times more sensitive than ours. He might be picking up on something we simply can't detect. A week after the first discovery, a truck from the city administration pulled up in front of their house. 3 men in work clothes got out with surveying equipment. The city was planning to install a new sewer pipe along their street, and the surveyors needed to precisely mark the boundaries of each property. Michael took the opportunity. He approached the lead surveyor, introduced himself, and asked if they could also scan the spot where Max had been digging so intensely. No problem, the man agreed. We've got a ground-penetrating radar. It can show us everything underground. The GPR was an impressive piece of equipment, a compact device on wheels that could scan soil up to 16 feet deep and display underground objects on a screen. Very interesting, the lead surveyor said, carefully studying the radar's readings after rolling it over the area Max had been digging. There's definitely something down there, something large and metallic, about 8 feet below the surface. Michael's heart skipped a beat and started pounding faster. What could it be? The surveyor shrugged. Hard to say without proper excavation. Could be an old septic system or some kind of abandoned utility. Or maybe someone buried a car or a large piece of machinery long ago. He looked at the screen again. In rural areas, you see all sorts of things, but the shape of this object is odd, almost square and fairly compact. Can you tell how long it's been down there? Judging by the readings, quite a while. The soil around it is tightly packed with time. I'd say at least 15 years, maybe more. Michael thanked the surveyors and immediately called O'Brien. The former detective listened carefully to the report about the metal object underground and promised to arrive within the hour. Though I wouldn't get your hopes up too high, he warned. It's probably just some old utility line. O'Brien didn't come alone. He brought with him a young detective, Mark Thompson, who had formally taken over Ethan's case after O'Brien's retirement. Thompson was skeptical. The chances that this is in any way related to the boy's disappearance are nearly zero, he said as he studied the ground radar readings. But since we're here, let's take a look. O'Brien examined the scan data carefully. His experienced eye caught something the younger detective had missed. "This doesn't look like a septic tank or a water line," he said thoughtfully. "It's too compact and perfectly shaped. And the depth is strange. Too deep for standard utilities, but not deep enough for major infrastructure." "What do you suggest?" Michael asked. "We dig, but carefully and methodically. If this is actually connected to your son's case..." He didn't finish the sentence, but everyone understood what he meant. The next day, Michael rented a small excavator. Thompson arrived with a team of specialists, a few police officers, a forensic expert, a fire department inspector to monitor air quality, and a technician with professional equipment. "If there's really something down there, we have to follow protocol," O'Brien explained to the parents. "Any misstep could make potential evidence inadmissible in court." The excavation began early in the morning. Michael operated the excavator with extreme caution, removing the soil in thin layers. Every 30 minutes, work was paused so the forensic specialist could descend into the pit and examine the newly exposed soil layer. Max sat nearby, watching everything closely. In his old brown eyes was something almost human, a look of understanding, as if he knew the people had finally grasped what he'd been trying to tell them all along. An hour into digging, the excavator bucket hit something metallic with a loud clang that echoed down the quiet morning street. Michael immediately shut off the engine and jumped down to clear the object with his hands. Gradually, the edge of a metal structure emerged from the soil. After another 30 minutes of careful digging, a compact metal hatch was revealed, embedded firmly in the earth. It was heavily rusted from years underground but still solid. It had a heavy handle and a lock that had nearly disintegrated from time and moisture. "What is that, for God's sake?" Sarah whispered, staring at the strange discovery with wide eyes. O'Brien knelt beside the hatch and examined it closely, carefully brushing away the remaining dirt with an old toothbrush. "Looks like the entrance to a Cold War-era fallout shelter," he said thoughtfully. "Back in the 50s and 60s, a lot of Americans built these in their backyards. They were afraid of nuclear war with the Soviets." "But why would the dog..." Sarah began. "Because someone's down there," O'Brien interrupted quietly but firmly. "Or was, recently." He pulled out a powerful tactical flashlight and shone it into the narrow gaps around the hatch. A faint stream of air was coming out. "The ventilation system is working," the detective noted. "This is definitely not just an abandoned bunker." The police initiated the official opening procedure. Thompson had to request a warrant from a judge, which took another 2 hours. During that time, a small crowd of curious neighbors and journalists gathered near the house. Someone had tipped off the local press about the unusual find. Sarah sat on the ground, hugging her knees. Michael stood nearby, gripping Max's leash. His hands were shaking. The hatch glinted in the sunlight, and everything felt far too quiet. "If it's, him," Sarah whispered, "do you want to be the first to see?" Michael nodded, unable to speak. He sat down next to his wife, and together they stared at the rusty metal, like it was a sealed coffin they were afraid to open. "We need to know something," she added. The forensic expert took dozens of photos of the hatch from different angles. Then O'Brien made the call to break the lock. "Everyone step back from the hatch to a safe distance," he ordered. "We don't know what's down there." The rust-eaten lock shattered into pieces after a few strikes with a sledgehammer. The hatch lid turned out to be surprisingly light, clearly designed to be opened from the inside, even by a woman. The hatch slowly opened, revealing a black hole in the earth and releasing a wave of stale air that hadn't changed in years. The smell was strange, not musty like an abandoned basement, but more like a long-sealed, yet lived-in room. O'Brien cautiously shone his powerful flashlight downward. The beam of light caught metal steps disappearing into the depths of the underground structure. "I'm going down first," he said, putting on a protective mask and checking his radio. "Everyone else, stay clear of the hatch until I give the signal." The descent seemed endless. 10 agonizing minutes passed, during which only the sound of O'Brien's careful steps and his occasional muffled voice checking the radio connection could be heard above. Then his surprised voice echoed from below. "My God, it's a real bunker, fully equipped, lived in. Someone definitely lives down here." Sarah's knees gave out. Michael barely caught her before she collapsed. A few minutes later, sounds began to rise from the depths. Footsteps, voices, movement, the scrape of furniture, the creak of doors opening. And then came a voice, from below, like a child's, but not quite a child's. A teenager's voice. "Is someone out there? Is it safe? It's not radiation?" Sarah dropped to her knees in the dirt beside the dugout hole. That voice, it was deeper than it had been 7 years ago. But the tone, the way he formed words, the rhythm, everything was painfully familiar. From the hatch emerged Detective O'Brien, and right behind him, a teenager, thin, extremely pale, with grown-out red hair and familiar freckles that now stood out even more on skin that hadn't seen sunlight in years. He looked older than 14, his face too serious for his age, his eyes too cautious, too alert. The boy squinted painfully in the daylight he hadn't seen in so long. He shielded his eyes with his hands, trying to adjust to the sun. He was dressed in clean but clearly handmade clothes, jeans and a sweater that had been mended and resized many times. "Where's Grandpa Walter?" he asked in a trembling voice, glancing around with a look of sheer panic and confusion. "What happened? Did the war finally end? Have the enemies found us? Why is it so bright?" "Ethan," Sarah whispered, rising slowly from her knees and taking a cautious step toward the son she hadn't seen in 7 years. "Ethan, it's Mommy. Do you remember me?" The boy jerked back, instinctively pressing himself against O'Brien, like he was the only familiar figure in this strange, terrifying world. There was real panic in his eyes. "You're not my mom," he said, looking at Sarah like she was a total stranger, maybe even a threat. "My mom died 7 years ago when terrorists bombed our city. Grandpa Walter told me. He showed me pictures of the destruction. Your enemies, your Russian agents. You've come to take me to the experiment camps." O'Brien gently placed a hand on the boy's shoulder, speaking as calmly and reassuringly as possible. "Ethan, I need you to listen to me very carefully," he said, crouching to the teen's level. "There was no war. There were no terrorist attacks in our city. And these people, these are your real parents. They've been searching for you for 7 long years." "That's not true," Ethan shouted, his voice cracking with emotion. "You're all lying. Grandpa Walter told me terrorists attacked America, that all the cities were destroyed, that only the ones who hid in bunkers survived, that only he could protect me from radiation and from the enemy." At that moment, Walter Green slowly stepped out of his house, moving like a man who knew his time had come, who knew the web of lies he had built was about to collapse. Seeing the crowd gathered around the open hatch, seeing Ethan out in the bright sunlight, he froze in place. The old man's face wore an expression of complete hopelessness and deep, all-consuming sorrow. His shoulders slumped, his arms hung limply at his sides. This was a man who knew his world, built entirely on lies, was falling apart for good. Ethan saw the old man and ran to him, stumbling on the uneven ground. He had grown unaccustomed to natural terrain after 7 years underground. "Grandpa! Grandpa Walter!" he cried, throwing his arms around the old man with the desperate grip of a child clinging to the only person he trusted. "What's happening? Why are these people saying there was no war? Where are our allies? Where are the rescue teams?" Walter hugged the boy with trembling arms and looked up at the gathering crowd. Tears streamed down his deeply wrinkled face, disappearing into his gray stubble. "Forgive me, Ethan," Walter whispered in a trembling voice. "Forgive me, my boy. Forgive a sick, old fool." O'Brien approached slowly, as one would approach a wounded, dangerous animal. "Walter Green," he said in an official but weary tone, "you are under arrest on suspicion of child abduction and unlawful confinement. You have the right to remain silent." But Walter wasn't listening. He looked only at Ethan, who clung to him with the desperation of a child who had just lost the last thing he could rely on in a collapsing world. "I never meant to hurt you," the old man said through tears, stroking the boy's long red hair. I just couldn't be alone anymore. Not after losing my family." "What family?" O'Brien asked sharply, interrupting the old man's confession. Walter slowly shook his head, still holding Ethan in his arms. "I lost them in 2016, in the Nice terror attack. My wife Elizabeth, my son David, and my daughter Anne. We were on vacation when the truck plowed into the crowd on the promenade. They died instantly. I was the only one left. I saved him, Walter said, locking eyes with O'Brien. I didn't let him die in a world that had already burned. I protected him from the chaos and horror above. Piece by piece, from Walter's fragmented statements, a horrifying picture began to form. Walter Green had indeed been an American engineer who lost his entire family in that horrific terrorist attack in France. The trauma and unbearable grief slowly eroded his sanity. He moved to Cedar Ridge, hoping to start a new life in a quiet place. But the pain never left. As the news increasingly reported rising international tensions, threats of terrorism on American soil, dangers from Russia and extremist groups, something finally snapped in Walter's damaged mind. He began preparing for an inevitable catastrophe he believed was coming. Ethan was immediately taken to Cedar Ridge Hospital for a full medical evaluation. Sarah fainted upon seeing her son and was also hospitalized in the same facility. Physically, the boy was surprisingly healthy. Walter had taken excellent care of him all these years, but psychologically, the teenager was in a state of profound shock. Dr. Elizabeth Harris, a seasoned child psychologist, had never seen anything like it. This isn't just abduction, she explained to the stunned parents. This is 7 years of systematic brainwashing during the most formative years of a child's life. The recovery process will be long and very difficult. The first days in the hospital were a nightmare. Ethan flatly refused to believe that Sarah and Michael were his real parents. He demanded to be returned to Grandpa Walter, screaming that he'd been kidnapped by enemy agents. The most convincing argument turned out to be Max. When the 11-year-old retriever slowly entered the hospital room, something unexpected happened. Max paused in the doorway, sniffed the air, and let out a soft whining sound. Then the old dog slowly walked to the bed and gently rested his graying muzzle on Ethan's lap. The boy froze. His hand instinctively settled on the familiar head, his fingers threading into the dog's silver fur. And in that moment, something clicked deep in his memory. "Max?" Ethan whispered, staring at the aged dog. You're really my Max." The dog wagged his tail enthusiastically and gently licked the boy's hand. It was the first step on a long journey toward accepting a brutal truth. Another breakthrough came when a nurse brought Ethan a slice of apple pie from the hospital cafeteria. He took a bite absent-mindedly and suddenly stopped. "That taste," he murmured. "I remember this taste. Mom, someone used to bake the same pie." Sarah rushed to the hospital with a freshly baked pie, using a recipe she hadn't touched in 7 years. Ethan took a piece, slowly bit into it, and closed his eyes. Tears rolled down his cheeks. "Mom," he whispered. And for the first time in 7 years, the word was meant for Sarah. The memories began to return in fragments. His mother's perfume triggered bedtime stories. His father's laughter brought back memories of their shared projects. The process was painfully slow, but Ethan gradually started to accept the truth. A month later, he stepped through the door of the house on Maple Street for the first time. Everything looked familiar, but felt so foreign. His room had been preserved exactly as it was 7 years ago, a museum of childhood. Adapting to normal life was agonizing. Ethan was afraid to go out alone. Bright light hurt his eyes and crowds triggered panic. Max became his best therapist. The old dog never left the boy's side. In November, Max passed away quietly in his sleep under his favorite oak tree. Ethan found him and cried real tears for the first time since everything had happened. "He saved me," Ethan told his parents. "For 7 years, he never gave up." They buried the dog in the same yard. Michael made a gravestone. Max Henderson, loyal friend and true hero. The court sentenced Walter to mandatory treatment in a psychiatric hospital. Sarah and Michael didn't push for the maximum penalty. They understood the old man had been sick and utterly broken by the loss of his family. By his 15th birthday, Ethan had learned to live with his past. He planned to study psychology, to help children with trauma. After a documentary about their story aired, the Voice of Hope Foundation received over $1 million in donations. In just 1 year, they helped locate 23 missing children. Ethan spoke at events for families of missing children. Never give up, even when there's no hope, even when everyone tells you to move on, don't give up. At the site where the bunker had once been, Michael planted a young oak tree, a symbol of hope born from tragedy. Every Sunday, the family visited Max's grave. They shared their news with him and said thank you for never giving up, even when everyone else had lost hope. You know, Ethan said one Sunday, sometimes I think it didn't happen by accident. Maybe I had to go through it so I could help others. No one deserves a childhood like that, Sarah said, shaking her head. Maybe not, but it taught me to treasure every day of freedom, every moment with the people I love. And it showed me what real love looks like, never giving up, even when everything feels hopeless. Ethan looked at Max's grave. To keep searching, keep believing, keep digging, until you find what you're looking for. Evening settled over Cedar Ridge. The family walked home along Maple Street, where 7 years earlier, a tragedy had nearly destroyed their lives. But they had survived, they had found each other, and they were together. Their house welcomed them with warm light. In the place where the bunker once lay, a young oak tree now grew. And somewhere in a psychiatric hospital, old Walter Green looked up at the stars and prayed that Ethan was happy. And somewhere between earth and sky, the spirit of an old retriever wagged his tail with satisfaction. He had completed his mission. He had brought the lost boy home. He had proven that love is stronger than time, loyalty deeper than despair, and hope brighter than any darkness.